There is something unusually still in this energy today. Like the moment just before a held breath releases. I want you to notice that with me for a second, that particular kind of stillness that isn't empty, it's full. Full of something that hasn't been spoken yet. Full of a feeling that someone has been carrying quietly, carefully, the way you carry something precious that you're afraid to set down because you're not sure it'll still be there when you reach for it again. That's where we're beginning today. If you're watching this, something drew you here. Maybe it was the title. Maybe it was a feeling you've been sitting with that you haven't been able to name. Either way, welcome. This is a collective reading, which means the energy here is speaking to a wide group of souls. Not everything will land for everyone, but if something resonates, let it. Trust that resonance. That recognition you feel in your chest when something is true? That's not coincidence. That's your own knowing, confirming itself. So let's move into this together. The first thing I'm sensing, and I want to describe this as I experience it, because it's visual before it's anything else, is a color. It's this deep, almost bruised indigo, and layered underneath it is gold. Not bright gold. Tarnished gold. The kind that's been through something. And these two colors are not fighting each other. They're coexisting in this strange, suspended tension, like oil and water that have finally, after a long time, found a way to share the same space without either one surrendering. That image is doing something for me. Because what I'm feeling beneath it is a person, your person, who has been in a kind of internal war with themselves. And they haven't been winning. But they also haven't been losing. They've just been suspended. Held in that tension between what they know and what they feel. Between what makes logical sense and what their soul won't stop insisting upon. There's something here about a realization that didn't arrive gently. It cracked through. I'm sensing a fracture, not destruction, but the kind of fracture that happens when something that has been held too rigidly finally gives way. And what's coming through that crack isn't darkness. It's light. But the kind of light that stings a little when you've been in the dark too long. Your person had a moment. Or maybe a series of moments. A slow accumulation of realizations that finally tipped into something undeniable. And whatever that realization was, it was about you. I want to sit with this a little longer because there's so much here beneath the surface. There's more depth than I first sensed. What I'm seeing now is an image of someone standing very still in a room full of movement. Everything around them is in motion, thoughts, distractions, other people, obligations, and yet they are completely motionless. Not because they're at peace. But because something has stopped them in their tracks. Something internal. A thought that became a feeling that became something so large they couldn't move around it anymore. And that thought is you. This resonates for many of you watching, this idea that your person has been going about their ordinary life and suddenly finding you in the middle of it, unbidden. Not because they sought it. Because they couldn't stop it. Notice how that energy feels. It has a particular texture to it, not desperate, not frantic. It's heavier than that. More solemn. Like a recognition that goes deeper than the mind. Like the soul tapping the shoulder of the ego and saying, asterisk, you know what this is. Stop pretending you don't, asterisk. There's a word that keeps coming through for me, obsession. But I want to reframe that word before we go any further, because the energy here isn't unhealthy fixation. It isn't possessive or compulsive in a destructive sense. What I'm feeling is something closer to inevitability. Your person has bumped up against the feeling that you are inevitable to them. That no matter how they try to redirect their attention, to rationalize, to create distance, internally, you keep being the answer to a question they can't stop asking. And that is both a beautiful thing and a deeply unsettling one for them. The energy shifts here. I want you to notice this with me. it moves from that heavy stillness into something more fluid, more emotional. There's a quality to it now, like water finding the lowest point. Like grief and longing and reverence all mixing together into something that doesn't have a clean name. What I'm being shown is a kind of internal healing that's been happening for your person, but the interesting thing, the thing that's catching my attention, is that this healing has not made things simpler for them. In most cases we think of healing as resolution, as clarity, as things finally making sense. But for your person, the healing has opened them up rather than closing things off. It has made them more sensitive, more aware, more honest with themselves, and that honesty keeps leading them back to you. It's like the chains they were carrying weren't what they thought they were. I'm sensing this very strongly. They thought certain attachments were trapping them, weighing them down, keeping them from moving forward freely. They may have even tried to release those attachments deliberately, through distance, through telling themselves certain stories about what was possible or what wasn't, about what made sense for their life. And the healing process they've been in has involved undoing those weights, one by one. But here's what's fascinating about this energy. Here's the layer that's emerging the more I sit with it. What they thought were chains keeping them bound to the past. When they looked more closely, when the healing stripped away the fear and the resistance and the protection they'd built around themselves, some of those chains weren't traps at all. Some of them were tethers. To something real. Something they hadn't been ready to fully acknowledge. I'm sensing a message here. It feels like I kept thinking I was healing by letting go. But letting go kept bringing me back to the same place. And eventually I had to ask myself what that place was trying to tell me. That place was you. That person they kept returning to, in their thoughts, in their dreams, in the quiet moments when there was nothing left to distract them, that was you. Let's move with the energy here because it's doing something interesting now. It's brightening slightly. Not dramatically, this isn't a sudden sunrise moment. It's more like the quality of light in early morning, when the darkness is still there but something gold is beginning to touch the edges of things. I keep coming back to that image of magnetism. And I want to describe what I mean, because it's more than just attraction. Magnetism is a force that operates without permission. You don't choose it. You don't switch it on. And more importantly, you can't switch it off simply by deciding to. You can create distance between two magnets. But the moment you remove the barrier between them, the pull returns instantly, as if no time has passed at all. That's what your person has been experiencing. For some of you watching, there has been a period of separation in this connection. Physical, emotional, or both. And during that separation, your person, consciously or unconsciously, was testing something. Testing whether the pull was still there. Testing whether what they felt was real or whether distance would dissolve it. Distance didn't dissolve it. This feels significant for a lot of you in this collective. The separation, whatever form it took, did not do what your person hoped it might do, which was to clarify things by making them feel less. Instead, it clarified things by making the feelings impossible to ignore. Absence amplified rather than diminished. And that amplification has brought your person to a place of reckoning. There's something almost sacred about that kind of reckoning. When you can't logic your way out of a feeling. When you've genuinely tried to release something and it won't release. When the heart keeps offering the same answer no matter how many times the mind asks a different question. That's not delusion. That's depth. That's something that has its roots further down than ordinary experience reaches. I want to pause here for a moment and offer this gently to whoever needs it. Some of you have been doubting yourselves in this connection. Wondering if what you felt was real, if you imagine the depth of it, if you've been too hopeful or too patient or too open. I want you to hear this, the energy in this reading is not the energy of a one-sided connection. What I'm perceiving is a resonance, something that exists between two fields, not just within one. Your person is not indifferent. They are in the middle of something profound and private and deeply real. You are not imagining things. The energy here speaks to more than one lifetime, and I don't say that lightly or poetically, I say it because it's what I'm genuinely sensing. There is a quality to the recognition your person feels for you that transcends ordinary familiarity. It's as though somewhere in the part of them that exists beneath name and history and circumstance, they know you. Not just from this life. From something older. And that knowing keeps surfacing, keeps insisting, keeps refusing to be filed away neatly. For some of you, your person has had an actual thought, spoken it internally or perhaps even whispered it to themselves, about forever. About every lifetime. About the feeling that this isn't just a chapter but something woven into the fabric of who they are. And that thought has unsettled them because of how completely it landed. Not as fantasy. As fact. The energy moves again here, and this time there's something a little more complex coming through. A duality. Two things that are true simultaneously, which can be disorienting to sit with. The first, your person is deeply drawn to you, across layers of themselves they don't fully understand, in ways that feel ancient and certain and real. The second, that depth frightens them. Not because of you specifically. But because of what it means to them about themselves. About their own heart. About the vulnerability of loving something so much you can no longer pretend it's optional. I'm feeling this as a kind of internal tension, a fractured equilibrium, if you will. Like someone who has always prided themselves on being measured, balanced, composed, suddenly finding that this particular thing, you, is the thing they cannot be composed about. And their identity has been somewhat built around a certain kind of internal order. Emotional regulation. A sense of control over their own inner landscape. You break that for them. Not violently. But thoroughly. And they've had to do a kind of spiritual reckoning with what it means that you affect them this way. Because if you affect them this way, then certain things they told themselves, about not needing, about not wanting, about being content with certain distances, those things require examination. And that examination? That's the healing. The painful, necessary, soul-expanding healing that is teaching them something about themselves they could only have learned through you. There's something I want to describe because it's coming through very visually and it feels important. I'm seeing two figures, and they're not quite together, but they're not apart in any meaningful sense either. There's this invisible thread between them. You can't see it with ordinary sight. But if you could perceive energy the way energy actually moves, you would see it clearly, a luminous filament connecting one to the other, pulsing faintly, steady, unbroken. Your person is aware of this thread. Not consciously, not in words. But in the way the body knows things the mind hasn't caught up with yet. In the way a compass needle knows north without understanding magnetism. They are oriented toward you in some essential way, and the more they've tried to look away, the more insistently the needle swings back. And what's happening now, what this reading is capturing, is the moment where that awareness is cresting. Where it's becoming impossible for your person to hold this privately anymore. The internal conversation they've been having is becoming louder. More urgent. More honest. I'm sensing something like a dam that has been holding for a long time. And the water isn't angry. It's not rushing violently. But it is persistent. And persistence wins over time, always. The water doesn't force itself through, it finds the places where the structure was always thinner. And those places are opening. Let's sit with what that means practically, energetically, for where this connection is going. Because I don't want to leave this purely in the abstract. The energy is pointing toward movement. Not frantic movement. Intentional movement. The kind that comes after long deliberation, after someone has sat with something so long they've moved through every argument against it and found that none of the arguments changed the fundamental feeling. Your person is approaching a threshold. They may already be at it. And what's on the other side of that threshold is a willingness. A willingness to stop managing this feeling from a safe distance. To stop treating what they feel for you as something to be handled, something to be carefully monitored and contained. And to begin, slowly, authentically, to let it move. Now, I want to be careful here, because for some of you this movement will look different than for others. This is a collective reading and the specifics will vary. For some, this manifests as direct communication. A message. A conversation that's been postponed. Words finally finding their way out. For others it's more internal, a decision your person makes, quietly, to stop working against what they know, to stop spending energy on resistance. And for others still, it might show up as a shift you notice in how they're present with you, something warmer, something that has released a guarded quality it used to carry. Trust what you observe. Your intuition in this connection is sharper than you're giving it credit for. The energy here has a quality now that I want to try to translate because it's subtle and beautiful and easy to miss. It's the feeling of something ancient becoming present. Of something that was always true arriving in real time. Not new, recognized. And recognition has a particular feeling that's different from discovery. Discovery is exciting, startling. Recognition is quieter. It's the exhale after a long-held breath. The settling of something into its proper place after being slightly off-kilter for longer than it should have been. That's what's happening for your person. Things are settling. The internal argument is losing its fuel. The part of them that kept generating reasons and rationales and careful distances is becoming quieter, and the part that simply knows, the part that doesn't require evidence or logic or permission, is becoming louder. And that knowing keeps saying your name. In whatever language the soul speaks. Over and over. I'm being given something here and I want to share it carefully. What I'm sensing is not just that your person thinks of you often, though they do, consistently, more than you probably know. What I'm sensing is that you have become a kind of internal reference point for them. When they imagine a future, you appear in it without being invited. When they encounter something meaningful, a piece of music, a certain quality of light, a conversation that touches something real, the first thing that happens, instinctively, before thought, is that they think of you. That's not ordinary. That's not what happens with people who are passing through our lives. That's the mark of someone who has already taken up residence in the deeper rooms of another person's interior world. And your person is slowly coming to terms with the fact that you live there now. That you've been there. And they can redecorate around you all they want, but the fundamental architecture has already shifted. For those of you who have been in a period of waiting in this connection, and I know many of you are, I want to speak to that directly for a moment. Waiting can feel like passivity. Like you're simply being still while life happens around you. But there's another kind of waiting that's actually very active. It's the kind of waiting that requires you to continue becoming. To continue growing, healing, expanding into your own life, not as a strategy, not to prove something, but because that's the only real thing you can do with the time you have. And that kind of waiting changes you. It deepens you. And it creates the person who will meet this connection when it opens, not with desperation, but with wholeness. Your person, in their own way, is in that same kind of waiting. Except they're waiting for themselves. For the part of them that is still catching up to what they already know. And that catching up is happening. I feel it clearly. This reading isn't about stagnation. The energy here is moving, even when it looks still on the surface. Something is shifting. As we move toward the close of this energy today, I want to describe one final image that's been with me for the last several minutes. I see two flames. Separate. Each with their own light, their own warmth, their own distinct quality. Not merging, not consuming each other, but sharing the same air. And when you watch two flames share the same air, you notice something: they lean toward each other. Not because of a decision. Because that's what flames do in proximity. They're drawn by something in the shared atmosphere, something invisible, something that defies the separateness they appear to maintain. Your person is leaning. Maybe they don't even know it yet. Maybe they know it perfectly and are still finding the courage to acknowledge it out loud, even to themselves. But the lean is real. The orientation is real. The pull, across this lifetime, across whatever distances separate you in the ordinary world, across all the careful rationales they've constructed, the pull is real. And you, wherever you are in this moment, you are not alone in what you feel about this connection. You are not holding this by yourself. On the other side of whatever space exists between you right now, there is someone carrying the same essential weight. Arriving at the same essential truth. From a different angle, through a different journey, at a different pace, but arriving. That's what this energy is telling me. That's what I keep feeling as I sit with these cards, with this collective, with whoever showed up today because something in them needed to hear this. Before you close this out, I want to leave you with something to carry. Whatever is happening in this connection, whatever the timing looks like, whatever uncertainty still lives in the spaces between you and your person, you are not imagining the depth of it. The soul-level quality of it is real. The feeling that this is something larger than ordinary circumstance is not wishful thinking. It is perception. It is you accurately sensing something true. And more than that, you are worthy of every bit of what you feel here. You don't need to shrink that. You don't need to rationalize it into something smaller so it's easier to hold. Let it be as large as it actually is. Because it is large. And so are you. The energy here is hopeful. Quietly, steadily, unmistakably hopeful. Take good care of yourselves. Whatever part of this reading found you today, let it settle. Let it do what it came to do. And trust that on the other side of all this, something is moving toward you, even in the stillness. Even now.